They say family and money don't mix, but I never expected my own sister's divorce to expose a decade of financial lies that would tear our family apart. The bank statement that landed on my desk that morning changed everything and showed me exactly who my sister really was. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The day started like any other Tuesday at Morgan Stanley, where I'd spent the last 8 years building my career as a financial advisor. I'm Catherine Wells, though everyone calls me Kate, and at 32, I'd earned my reputation as one of the firm's top performers in wealth management. My office on the 28th floor overlooked the Chicago skyline, a daily reminder of how far I'd come from our modest upbringing in suburban Milwaukee. I was reviewing a client's portfolio when my phone buzzed with my sister Rebecca's familiar ringtone. Sisters are doing it for themselves. The irony of that choice wouldn't hit me until much later. I almost let it go to voicemail. Tuesday mornings were usually packed with client meetings, but Rebecca had been going through a rough patch with her divorce from Thomas, her husband of 5 years. "Kate, I need your help." Her voice cracked as soon as I picked up. I could hear the desperation, the kind that usually preceded a request for money. This wasn't the first time, but something felt different. Thomas is trying to take everything. His lawyer's demanding a full audit of our accounts, and I can't afford to fight him anymore. I leaned back in my chair, mentally calculating how much this conversation might cost me. Over the years, I'd helped Rebecca with temporary loans more times than I could count. College textbooks, her first car, the down payment for her condo. Some she'd repaid, others had mysteriously transformed into gifts after tearful conversations about her teaching salary and the cost of living in Milwaukee. "How much are we talking about, Becca?" I asked, using her childhood nickname, hoping to soften whatever number was coming. 50,000. The words hung in the air like heavy smoke. "I know it's a lot, but it's just temporary. Once the divorce is settled, I'll pay you back every penny. I promise." My emergency fund, carefully built over years of disciplined saving, sat at exactly $75,000. It was my safety net, my peace of mind, my guarantee that I'd never end up like our parents, who lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis when I was 15 and Rebecca was 12. That's a significant amount, Becca. What happened to the money from selling the lake house? Thomas and Rebecca had purchased a vacation property 2 years ago, and I knew they'd sold it just before the divorce proceedings began. "We had to use it for other things," she said vaguely. "Please, Kate, you're the only one I can turn to. Mom and Dad barely have enough for retirement, and you're doing so well. Your Christmas cards look like something out of a magazine. The vacations, the designer clothes, that gorgeous condo of yours. You always said family comes first." I closed my eyes, remembering the night our parents sat us down at the kitchen table, explaining through tears that we were losing our home. Dad's investment firm had collapsed, and Mom's part-time teaching job couldn't cover the mortgage. That night, I promised myself I would never be financially vulnerable. Every decision I'd made since then, from choosing finance as my major to taking the job at Morgan Stanley straight out of college, was driven by that promise. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "I need to review my finances and make sure I can help without compromising my own security." It was the responsible answer, the professional one I'd give any client asking about a major withdrawal. "How long?" Rebecca's voice turned sharp. "Thomas's lawyer is giving me until Friday to respond to their demands. If I don't have proper representation by then, they'll push for a default judgment. I could lose everything, Kate." I thought about the emergency fund, safely held in a separate high-yield savings account. It represented more than just money. It was my insurance against becoming our parents, against ever having to sit my own children down and tell them we'd lost everything. Give me until tomorrow morning, I promised. I'll look over everything tonight and call you first thing. After hanging up, I pulled up my banking app, staring at the emergency fund balance. $75,132.18. Nearly a decade of careful saving, of saying no to impromptu shopping sprees and luxury vacations with friends, of choosing financial security over immediate gratification. Something about Rebecca's story wasn't sitting right. The lake house had sold for close to $400,000 just 6 months ago. Even with the remaining mortgage, they should have walked away, with significant equity. And Thomas, while not the warmest person, had always seemed fair when it came to money. I opened my bottom desk drawer, pulling out the folder where I kept copies of all the financial documents related to helping my family. Every loan, every gift, every repayment plan, meticulously documented, a habit ingrained by both my profession and my past. The papers told a story of their own, one of increasing frequency and amounts in Rebecca's requests for help. My computer chimed with a calendar reminder, client meeting in 15 minutes. I slipped the folder into my briefcase, determined to review everything thoroughly that evening. What I didn't know then was that this simple act of due diligence would unravel a web of deception that would fundamentally change my relationship with my sister forever. As I prepared for my client meeting, Rebecca's words echoed in my mind. Family comes first. But as any financial advisor knows, the first rule of helping others is ensuring your own oxygen mask is securely in place. I just hadn't realized yet how prophetic that principle would prove to be. That evening, I sat at my dining room table, the city lights of Chicago twinkling through floor-to-ceiling windows that I'd once considered an extravagant upgrade. Now they provided the perfect backdrop for what would become the most revealing night of my professional life. The folder from my office lay open before me, alongside a glass of Cabernet I'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't the celebration I'd had in mind. Opening my laptop, I began a systematic review of every financial interaction I'd had with Rebecca over the past decade. As a financial advisor, I'd learned that numbers tell stories that people often try to hide. And Rebecca's numbers were beginning to tell a troubling tale. The first red flag appeared in the loan documentation for her condo down payment. 3 years ago, she'd asked for $25,000, claiming it was the final piece she needed to secure her dream home. I'd transferred the money directly to her account, trusting her explanation that the rest would come from her savings and Thomas's inheritance. Out of professional curiosity, or perhaps brotherly intuition, I pulled up the county property records. The purchase price listed was $50,000 less than she'd told me. A quick calculation revealed that my portion of the down payment should have been significantly smaller. Where had the extra money gone? My phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca. Any decision yet? Thomas's lawyer is pressuring me. I placed the phone face down, focusing instead on the document trail before me. Next came the lake house transaction history. Something about Rebecca's vague explanation of the proceeds had bothered me all day. I still had access to Thomas's investment accounts. I'd helped him set them up when they first married, though he'd later transferred to another advisor. A quick login revealed something startling. Thomas had never touched his inheritance. In fact, according to the transaction history, the entire down payment for the lake house had come from a series of cash deposits into their joint account. The threads of inconsistency were beginning to weave together into a pattern I didn't want to see. I opened my email, searching for the correspondence from 6 months ago when Rebecca had asked me to be a reference for a personal loan. She'd said it was for home renovations, but the timing coincided perfectly with the lake house sale. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed the number for Sandra Chen, my colleague in the private banking division. Sandra, I need a favor, strictly confidential. Can you pull the loan application for Rebecca Wells from last September? Give me a moment, Sandra replied. I heard keyboard clicks in the background. Kate, that application was denied. multiple red flags in the financial disclosure section. The underwriters found evidence of, well, you should probably see this. Yourself. I'll send it over securely. The PDF that appeared in my inbox minutes later made my blood run cold. Rebecca had listed me as a co-guarantor on the loan, complete with a forged signature and falsified income statements in my name. If the loan had been approved, I would have been legally responsible for a $200,000 debt I knew nothing about. My wine glass sat untouched as I dove deeper. Credit report inquiries revealed multiple credit cards opened in the past year, all maxed out. A search through my email archives uncovered a pattern of escalating financial requests, each accompanied by a different urgent explanation. The lake house proceeds hadn't gone to other things. They'd gone to covering a web of debts I was only now beginning to unravel. The final piece clicked into place when I found a small notation in my records from 2 years ago. Rebecca had asked me to review some investment paperwork for her, claiming she wanted to start building her own portfolio. I'd made a note about unusual trading patterns, but had dismissed it, trusting her explanation about learning the market. Now, cross-referencing the dates with her bank statements, I could see that she'd been day trading with borrowed money, chasing increasingly risky investments to cover mounting losses. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Thomas's lawyer. Apparently, Rebecca had listed me as a character witness in their divorce proceedings. The email included an attachment, a complete financial disclosure required by the Yao court. I hesitated before opening it, already knowing what I would find. The document confirmed my worst fears. Rebecca had been systematically misrepresenting her financial situation to everyone in her life. The emergency fund she was demanding wasn't for legal fees. It was to cover margins calls on trading accounts I hadn't known existed. Thomas wasn't trying to take everything. He was trying to untangle himself from a financial mess that threatened to pull them both under. As I stared at the evidence before me, a memory surfaced. Rebecca at 12, tears streaming down her face as we watched. The movers empty our childhood home. "Promise we'll always take care of each other," she'd said, clutching my hand. I'd promised, meaning every word. But as I looked at the documents scattered across my dining room table, I realized that sometimes taking care of someone means refusing to enable their destructive behaviors. I picked up my phone, this time to call someone I should have contacted hours ago, my own lawyer. Before I could help Rebecca, if I could help her at all, I needed to protect myself from the financial typhoon she'd created. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is to let them face the consequences of their actions. The city lights continued to twinkle outside my window, unchanging despite the seismic shifts occurring in my understanding of family, trust, and responsibility. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and harder decisions. But for now, I began methodically documenting everything I'd discovered, knowing that the real test of family loyalty isn't always in what you give. Sometimes it's in what you have the courage to withhold. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after a sleepless night spent planning difficult conversations. I had scheduled a late start at the office, arranging to meet Rebecca at a quiet cafe near my building at 8 a.m. The location was intentional, neutral ground, public enough to maintain composure, private enough for a serious discussion. I arrived 20 minutes early, setting up my laptop and organizing the key documents I'd discovered. The morning sunlight streamed through the cafe's windows, casting long shadows across the manila folders. My coffee sat untouched, its aroma mixing with the scent of freshly baked pastries, a jarring contrast to the gravity of what was about to unfold. Rebecca arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed in a designer outfit I knew she couldn't afford. Her smile faltered when she saw the documents spread before me. "What's all this?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "I thought we were just discussing the emergency fund." We need to talk about more than that, I replied, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. I spent last night reviewing our financial history, Becca, and I found some concerning discrepancies that we need to address before we can discuss any additional loans. Her face remained composed, but I noticed her fingers tightening around her purse strap. I don't understand. What discrepancies? I opened the first folder, laying out the condo documentation. Let's start with your down payment. The purchase price you quoted me was $50,000 more than what appears in public records. Can you explain that? A flicker of something, fear, defiance, crossed her face. There must be some mistake in the records. You know how government documentation can be. The records are correct, Becca. I checked multiple sources. I pulled out the Lake House documents next. Just like I checked the source of funds for the Lake House down payment. You told me it came from Thomas's inheritance, but his accounts show that money was never touched. Instead, there were large cash deposits from unknown sources. Rebecca's composure cracked slightly. You had no right to look into Thomas's accounts. I'm still listed as his advisor of record, but that's not the point. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. What I really want to discuss is this. I placed the loan application with my forged signature on the table between us. The color drained from her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of our breathing and the gentle tap of rain that had begun to fall outside. I can explain, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm listening. And I was. Despite everything I'd discovered, despite the anger and betrayal churning inside me, I wanted to understand, needed to understand how my sister, the same girl who'd helped me study for finance exams, who'd celebrated every promotion with genuine joy, had come to this point. What followed was a 30-minute confession that revealed the extent of Rebecca's financial deception. The day trading had started small, a few thousand here and there, chasing the high of quick profits. When the losses began mounting, she'd turned to credit cards, then personal loans, creating an intricate shell game of moving money around to cover minimum payments. I thought I could fix it, she said, tears streaming down her face. Every trade was going to be the one that turned everything around. Thomas had no idea. I handled all our finances. When he finally discovered some of it and filed for divorce, I panicked. The $50,000 I asked for. It wasn't for legal fees. There's a margin call due tomorrow, and if I don't cover it, everything will come crashing down. I pulled out one final document, a referral to a financial counselor and addiction specialist who dealt specifically with trading addiction. I can't give you the money, Becca, not this time, but I can help you get the support you need. You don't understand. Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. If I don't make this payment, I'll lose everything. My trading accounts will be frozen. The credit card companies will start calling. Thomas's lawyer will find out. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. Please, Kate, you're my only hope. Ma, the desperation in her eyes reminded me of that night in our childhood home, but this time, I knew what I had to do. You're going to lose those things anyway, I said gently. The question is whether you want to lose them on your own terms, with a support system in place to help you rebuild, or wait until everything crashes down around you. And you're willing to let that happen? To your own sister? Her tone turned accusatory. What happened to family first? This is me putting family first, I replied, sliding the counselor's card closer to her. By refusing to help you dig this hole any deeper. By being strong enough to say no when every instinct is screaming at me to protect you from pain. True family loyalty isn't about enabling destructive behavior. It's about being brave enough to help someone face their demons. Rebecca stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice cold. "When everything falls apart, remember that you could have prevented it." I watched her storm out of the cafe, leaving the counselor's card untouched on the table. The rain had intensified outside, matching the storm of emotions I felt inside. But beneath the turmoil, there was a certainty that I'd done the right thing. Sometimes, the most painful choices are the ones that lead to healing. I gathered my documents slowly, knowing that while this conversation was over, its repercussions were just beginning. My phone buzzed, a text from my lawyer confirming our appointment that afternoon. It was time to protect myself legally while leaving the door open for Rebecca to seek help when she was ready. As I stepped out into the rain, I realized that true strength isn't just about building financial security. It's about having the courage to make difficult decisions in service of long-term healing, even when those decisions break your heart. The next 48 hours unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos. By Wednesday afternoon, Rebecca's financial house of cards had begun its inevitable collapse. I sat in my office, watching my email inbox fill with notifications from various financial institutions, each message adding another layer to the complexity of her deception. The margin call she'd been desperate to cover had triggered a cascade of events. Her trading accounts were frozen, revealing unauthorized transactions that stretched back months. Credit card companies began calling, their algorithms detecting the sudden cease in her careful juggling of minimum payments. But it was the email from Thomas's lawyer that truly captured the magnitude of the situation. "Ms. Wells," it began. "Formally, in light of the new financial evidence that has come to our attention, we are requesting your presence at a deposition next Tuesday. Documents have surfaced indicating your sister attempted to use your credentials and identity in several financial transactions without your knowledge or consent." I forwarded the email to Caroline Martinez, my attorney, who had already begun the process of legally distancing me from Rebecca's financial dealings. "This is actually good timing," Caroline replied within minutes. "We can address both the unauthorized use of your credentials and ensure you're protected from any potential fallout." A knock at my office door interrupted my response. Sandra Chen, my colleague from private banking, stood in the doorway, her expression grave. "Kate, do you have a moment? There's something you need to see." She placed a folder on my desk, opening it to reveal a series of transaction records. "These were flagged by our fraud detection system this morning. Someone attempted to access your personal accounts using your credentials. The attempts originated from your sister's IP address." My hands remained steady as I reviewed the documents, years of professional training keeping my exterior calm despite the emotional turmoil beneath. Rebecca had tried to access my emergency fund directly, attempting to circumvent my refusal by simply taking the money herself. "The attempts were blocked," Sandra continued, "but given your family connection, we needed to inform you personally before escalating this to our fraud department." I closed the folder, my decision already made. "Proceed with standard fraud protocols," I said, my voice firm. "Family connections don't exempt anyone from the consequences of their actions." Sandra nodded, understanding the weight of what I was authorizing. As she left my office, I turned to the window, watching the Chicago traffic flow beneath me. Each car represented someone with their own struggles, their own difficult decisions to make. How many of them were facing similar choices between family, loyalty, and professional integrity? My phone buzzed with a text from our mother. "Rebecca told us everything. How could you abandon your sister when she needed you most? We raised you better than this." I didn't respond immediately, instead pulling up my calendar to block off the evening. There was someone I needed to visit, someone who might help me navigate these turbulent waters with the wisdom of experience. 2 hours later, I sat in the modest living room of Dr. Sarah Martinez, my mentor from business school. Now retired, she had guided countless students through the complexities of finance and ethics. Her walls were lined with books, her coffee table covered with academic journals. She still reviewed to keep sharp, as she put it. "You did the right thing," she said after I finished recounting the events of the past few days, though doing the right thing rarely feels good in the moment. "I keep wondering if I could have prevented this," I admitted, cradling a cup of her famous Cuban coffee. "If I'd paid more attention to the warning signs." "Kate," she interrupted gently, "you're a financial advisor, not a fortune teller. Your sister made her choices. What you're doing now, refusing to enable her behavior while leaving the door open for genuine change, that's the hardest kind of love there is." "My parents don't see it that way," I said, thinking of my mother's text. "They think I'm betraying the family." Sarah's eyes crinkled with understanding. "When your parents lost everything in 2008, how did they recover?" "They didn't. Not really," I replied. "They downsized, took whatever jobs they could find. They're still renting, still living paycheck to paycheck." "And what did that teach you?" "To be financially responsible, to never take risks I couldn't afford, to—" I paused, the realization dawning. "To break the cycle." "Exactly," Sarah nodded. "You're not just protecting your emergency fund, Kate. You're protecting the principles that helped you build it. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for our family is model better behavior, even when they're not ready to appreciate it." As I drove home that evening, my mother's words echoed in my mind. "We raised you better than this." Perhaps they had, just not in the way they intended. They had raised me to learn from their mistakes, to build something stronger, to understand that true family loyalty sometimes requires the courage to say no. My phone had accumulated several missed calls from Rebecca, along with a voicemail I wasn't ready to hear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: the deposition, the fraud investigation, the family fallout. But as I entered my condo, I felt a strange sense of peace. The emergency fund I'd protected wasn't just about money. It was about maintaining the boundaries that allowed me to help others without compromising my own stability. I opened my laptop, beginning the process of documenting everything for the upcoming legal proceedings. Each entry represented not just a financial transaction, but a lesson in the complex intersection of family, finance, and personal integrity. Sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to let someone face the consequences of their choices, while remaining strong, enough to help them rebuild when they're ready to change. The deposition was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. in a sterile conference room at Bennett, Ross & Associates, Thomas's law firm. I arrived 30 minutes early, my portfolio containing every document I'd gathered, each piece of evidence, carefully organized and annotated. The morning sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating dramatic silhouettes of the attorneys and paralegals preparing for the day ahead. I wasn't prepared to see my parents there, sitting beside Rebecca in the waiting area. My mother's disapproving glare and my father's defeated posture told me everything I needed to know about whose side they had chosen. Rebecca sat between them, wearing a conservative navy suit that looked new, another expense she couldn't afford. "Mrs. Wells?" A young paralegal approached me. "We're ready to begin." The conference room felt smaller than it was, the tension making the air thick and heavy. Thomas sat at one end of the long mahogany table, his attorney beside him. He looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from discovering your entire marriage was built on financial deception. "Please state your name and occupation for the record," Thomas's attorney began once everyone was seated. "Catherine Wells, Senior Financial Advisor at Morgan Stanley." What followed was 3 hours of methodical questioning, each answer revealing another layer of Rebecca's financial manipulation. I detailed every loan, every forged document, every attempted unauthorized access to my accounts. My voice remained steady, professional, even as I watched my sister's facade crumble with each revelation. And you have documentation to support all of these claims? Thomas's attorney asked. Yes, I replied, opening my portfolio. Everything is here, including the attempted fraud against my personal accounts from last week. My mother gasped. Rebecca's attorney requested a brief recess, but the damage was done. The truth was now part of the official record, impossible to ignore or explain away. During the break, my father approached me in the hallway. His face had aged years in the past week, new lines etched around his eyes and mouth. Katie, he said, using my childhood nickname, you need to stop this. Your sister is family. Whatever she's done, we protect our own. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same man who had once told me that taking out multiple mortgages on our family home was just good business. The man who had refused to listen when his own financial advisor warned him about overextending. The man whose choices had shaped my entire approach to financial security. Dad, I said gently, protecting someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences. It means helping them face those consequences in a way that leads to growth. You sound like one of those self-help books, he scoffed. This is real life, Katie. Your sister's life is falling apart, and you're just standing there with your fancy job and your fancy condo, watching it happen. No, Dad. I'm standing here as a professional who understands that enabling financial fraud isn't love, it's codependency. And as a sister who cares enough to say no when saying yes would only cause more damage. He turned away, shoulders slumped, and rejoined my mother and Rebecca. I watched them huddle together, three people bound by a shared belief that love meant protecting each other from reality, no matter the cost. The deposition resumed, but something had shifted. Rebecca's attorney seemed less combative, more focused on damage control. Thomas's expression had softened slightly, not with forgiveness, but with the relief of someone whose suspicions had finally been confirmed. As the proceedings concluded, Rebecca's attorney requested a private moment with his client. I gathered my documents, preparing to leave when Thomas approached me. Thank you, he said quietly, for telling the truth, even though it must have been difficult. I nodded, understanding the gratitude beneath his words. He too had been caught between loyalty and integrity, between the person he had married and the reality of who she had become. Later that evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the day's events, an email arrived from Caroline Martinez, my attorney. Attached was a draft of a restraining order against Rebecca, a precautionary measure given her attempts to access my accounts. My cursor hovered over the attachment, each click bringing me closer to a decision that would fundamentally alter our family dynamics. But as Dr. Sarah Martinez had reminded me, sometimes the most loving choice is the hardest one to make. I signed the document, my signature representing not just legal protection, but a declaration of boundaries. My phone immediately lit up with a text from my mother. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I typed out my response carefully. No, Mom. I'm trying to save it by showing that real love includes accountability. When Rebecca is ready to face her actions and seek help, I'll be here, but I won't help her hide from the truth anymore. The city lights began to twinkle outside my window as day turned to dusk. Each light represented a home, a family, perhaps someone else facing their own difficult choices between loyalty and truth. I opened my emergency fund account, the balance still secure, a testament to the importance of maintaining boundaries. Not just financial ones, but emotional ones as well. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I knew I had chosen integrity over enabling, growth over protection, and true love over false peace. Sometimes, being the bad guy in someone else's story means you're finally becoming the hero in your own. 1 week after the deposition, I received an unexpected call from Thomas's attorney. Ms. Wells, we've uncovered something you need to see. His voice carried an urgency that made me sit up straighter in my office chair. Can you come to our offices this afternoon? 3 hours later, I sat in the same conference room where the deposition had taken place, but this time the atmosphere was different. Spread across the table were financial documents I hadn't seen before, bank statements, investment reports, and transaction records dating back 5 years. These were found during our forensic audit, Thomas's attorney explained, sliding a particular statement toward me. We believe your sister's financial deceptions started much earlier than anyone realized, and they extend far beyond what we initially discovered. The statement he highlighted showed a series of transfers from an account I didn't recognize into Rebecca's personal account. The dates aligned perfectly with the times she had paid back some of her loans from me. With a sinking feeling, I realized the implications. She hadn't repaid me with her own money at all. She had been borrowing from others to pay me back, creating an elaborate pyramid scheme of debt. There's more, the attorney continued, producing another document. We found evidence that she attempted to use your professional credentials to secure investments for other people, friends, colleagues, even some of her students' parents. She was presenting herself as your authorized representative. My professional reputation, the one thing I had fought hardest to protect, had been put at risk without my knowledge. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, but years of handling difficult client situations helped me maintain my composure. Have you contacted the SEC? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Not yet. Given your position in the industry and your cooperation so far, we wanted to give you the opportunity to report this yourself. I nodded, already reaching for my phone to contact our compliance department. This was no longer just about family, dynamics, or personal betrayal. It had evolved into a serious professional ethics issue that could have far-reaching consequences. As I left the law office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a social media post Rebecca had just made. Family isn't about money or success. It's about standing together when times are tough. Shame on those who forget where they came from. The irony was palpable. While she was posting about family loyalty, I was discovering just how deeply she had betrayed not only my trust, but potentially put my entire career at risk. That evening, I met with Marcus Chen, head of compliance at our firm. His office, usually intimidating with its wall of professional certifications and regulatory manuals, felt like a sanctuary of order and ethics. You did the right thing coming. To us immediately, he said after I finished explaining the situation. We'll need to conduct our own investigation, of course, but your prompt disclosure will work in your favor. What about the clients she approached? I asked, thinking of the innocent people who might have been drawn into her schemes. We'll contact each one personally, Marcus assured me. Your sister never had actual access to any client accounts, thanks to our security protocols. But we need to ensure no one acted on her unauthorized representations. As we discussed the next steps, I received another call, this time from Rebecca's attorney. Ms. Wells, your sister would like to meet with you. She says she has information that could help minimize the damage to your professional reputation. The implication was clear. She was trying to leverage what she knew for her own benefit. Instead of accepting responsibility, she was attempting to negotiate. I thought about Dr. Sarah Martinez's words about breaking cycles. This was another cycle that needed to end. Please inform my sister that any information she has about potential violations of securities regulations should be directed to our compliance department, I replied, my voice firm. I'm not interested in making deals. Later that night, as I sat in my home office updating my personal records with the day's developments, I received an email from Thomas. Attached was a photo taken at our parents' house earlier that day. Rebecca surrounded by family members, clearly in the middle of what appeared to be a strategy session. The subject line read simply, "Thought you should know what you're up against." I stared at the image, noting how my parents flanked Rebecca protectively. how my aunts and uncles gathered around her like a shield. They were planning something. Undoubtedly another attempt to pressure me into helping her avoid consequences. But as I looked at their concerned faces, I realized something profound. They weren't just enabling Rebecca's behavior. They were perpetuating a generational pattern of financial irresponsibility and misplaced loyalty. I opened my emergency fund account one more time, not to check the balance, but to rename it. Professional Integrity Fund, I typed, saving the change. Because that's what it had become. Not just a safety net for unexpected expenses, but a symbol of my commitment to maintaining ethical boundaries, even when those boundaries cost me relationships. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The compliance investigation would proceed, professional relationships would be tested, and family ties would be strained further. But I had chosen my path, one of truth, integrity, and genuine growth. Sometimes the greatest act of love is standing firm in your principles, even when everyone around you mistakes that firmness for cruelty. The compliance investigation moved with methodical precision. Over the next 2 weeks, I found myself in a series of meetings with internal auditors, each session revealing new layers of Rebecca's attempted infiltration into my professional world. Marcus Chen had assembled a dedicated team, understanding the potential implications for both the firm and client trust. We've identified 17 instances where your sister represented herself as having authority to act on your behalf, Marcus explained during our morning briefing. The conference room on the 30th floor offered a panoramic view of Chicago's financial district, a reminder of everything I had worked to achieve. Fortunately, our security protocols prevented any unauthorized transactions. I reviewed the detailed report before me, noting the careful documentation of each attempt. Rebecca had been systematic, targeting primarily middle-class families from her school, teachers, administrators, and parents who trusted her because of her connection to me. The realization that she had attempted to exploit not only my credentials, but also her position as an educator made the betrayal even more profound. "There's something else," Marcus continued, sliding another document across the table. "We found evidence that she attempted to access our client management system using credentials she shouldn't have known existed. The implications were clear. Someone inside our firm must have helped her." As I scanned the access logs, a familiar name caught my eye. David Parker, a junior advisor I had mentored 2 years ago. The same advisor who had always seemed particularly interested in my family stories during our mentoring sessions. The discovery led to an uncomfortable meeting in HR's offices. David sat across from me, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "She said she was helping you," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "That you were too busy with major clients to handle smaller investments. I thought I was doing you a favor." I maintained my professional composure, but inside, I felt a mix of disappointment and responsibility. Had my own stories about helping family inadvertently created an environment where this seemed acceptable? "Trust isn't just about intention, David," I said finally. "It's about maintaining the integrity of our entire system. Every credential shared, every protocol bypassed, puts our clients at risk." His resignation letter was on Marcus's desk by end of day, a career potentially ruined because he had chosen personal loyalty over professional ethics. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Thomas's new financial advisor, Jennifer Martinez, no relation to Dr. Sarah, had requested an urgent meeting. She arrived carrying a thick folder and a concerned expression. "I've been reviewing your ex-brother-in-law's accounts," she began, "and I found something that might interest you." She opened the folder to reveal a series of transaction records. "These transfers to your sister's accounts, they align perfectly with major life insurance premium payments." My breath caught as I understood the implication. Rebecca had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on me, using the personal information she had gathered over years of financial manipulation. The premiums had been paid using money from her unauthorized investment schemes. "We've already contacted the insurance company," Jennifer assured me. "They're investigating it as potential fraud. But I thought you should know. This goes beyond simple financial desperation." The discovery shifted something fundamental in my understanding of the situation. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about premeditation and calculated risk. My sister had moved from opportunistic fraud to strategic planning. I left the office later than usual that night, the weight of the day's revelations heavy on my shoulders. The city lights flickered below, each one representing a home, a family, a set of relationships built on trust. How many other professionals faced similar challenges? How many others had to choose between personal loyalty and professional integrity? My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Rebecca's being investigated by her school board now. Are you happy? You've ruined her career too." I began typing a response, then deleted it. Instead, I opened my email and composed a message to Marcus Chen, requesting a meeting with our firm's ethics committee. It was time to turn this painful experience into something constructive, a case study in maintaining professional boundaries and protecting client interests, even when personal relationships are involved. As I drove home, I thought about David, Parker, and the choice he had made. In trying to help, he had compromised the very principles that make our profession trustworthy. It was a mistake born of good intentions, just as my years of enabling Rebecca had been. My apartment felt different when I walked in, cleaner, clearer somehow. I had spent the weekend removing family photos, not out of anger, but as part of a necessary separation between personal history and professional present. On my desk sat a new nameplate, delivered that morning. Catherine Wells, Senior Financial Advisor, CFPR, a reminder of the standards I had sworn to uphold. The emergency fund, now Professional Integrity Fund, remained untouched, its balance a testament to the importance of maintaining boundaries. But its true value wasn't in the numbers. It was in what it represented. The courage to stand firm when pressure to compromise comes from those we love most. The Milwaukee Public School Board hearing room embodied institutional formality, with its wood-paneled walls and rows of chairs arranged in precise lines. I sat in the back, observing as Rebecca faced the consequences of her actions in yet another professional sphere. The school board had convened an emergency session after learning about her unauthorized financial activities involving parents of students. Superintendent Patricia Morrison, a distinguished woman with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, addressed the assembled group with measured authority. "Ms. Wells, we have reviewed the documentation provided by Morgan Stanley's compliance department, as well as statements from several parents in our district. The evidence suggests you leveraged your position as an educator to engage in unauthorized financial activities." Rebecca sat alone at the respondents' table, her usual supporters notably absent. My parents had finally recognized the gravity of the situation, or perhaps they simply couldn't face another public revelation of their daughter's misconduct. She wore the same navy suit from the deposition, but it hung differently now, as if the weight of her actions had physically transformed her. "Would you like to make a statement before the board proceeds with its deliberation?" Superintendent Morrison asked. Rebecca's voice trembled as she stood. "I never meant to harm anyone. I was trying to help these families invest in their children's futures. My sister's success in finance inspired me to share that opportunity with others who might not have access to professional financial advisors." The irony of her attempting to use my success to justify her actions wasn't lost on anyone in the room. I watched as board members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of disappointment and concern. Dr. James Chen, the board's ethics officer, and, by coincidence, Marcus Chen's father, spoke next. "Ms. Wells, we've reviewed the financial literacy curriculum you developed for your students. It appears that several of your investment recommendations to parents aligned with periods when you needed to cover personal trading losses. Would you care to explain this correlation?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I thought about the students in Rebecca's classes, learning about financial responsibility from someone who had systematically violated every principle she taught. The damage extended beyond monetary losses. She had compromised the trust inherent in the teacher-student relationship. As Rebecca struggled to formulate a response, my phone vibrated with an email from Marcus Chen. The subject line read, SEC Preliminary Findings. I stepped into the hallway to read it, knowing that the regulatory investigation would have implications for both the school board's decision and Rebecca's future. The email confirmed what we had suspected. Rebecca's unauthorized use of my credentials constituted a serious violation of securities regulations. The SEC was preparing to file formal charges, and they were particularly interested in the pattern of targeting vulnerable populations, teachers, parents, and school staff who trusted her because of her position. When I returned to the hearing room, Superintendent Morrison was delivering the board's decision. Ms. Wells, your actions represent a fundamental breach of trust. This board has a responsibility to protect not only our students, but also our community. Effective immediately, your employment with Milwaukee Public Schools is terminated. Rebecca's composure finally broke. You don't understand, she pleaded. These families wanted to invest. I was helping them access opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. My sister, she gestured toward where I sat, she hoards her success, keeps all her financial knowledge for her wealthy clients. I was trying to democratize investment opportunities. Dr. Chen's response was measured but firm. Financial inclusion is indeed important, Ms. Wells, but it must be achieved through legitimate channels, not through deception and unauthorized activities. Your actions have potentially damaged these families' trust in both educational and financial institutions. As the hearing concluded, I received another text from my mother. Are you satisfied now? Your sister's life is completely destroyed. But watching Rebecca gather her belongings, I saw something my mother couldn't, a glimmer of reality finally breaking through the justifications and deflections. Later that evening, I sat in my office completing a detailed report for our firm's ethics committee. The document would serve as a case study in maintaining professional boundaries and protecting client interests. But more importantly, it would help other financial advisors recognize and respond to similar situations. My phone lit up with a notification, a message from Thomas. Thank you for seeing this through. It couldn't have been easy. Attached was a photo of a check he had written to one of Rebecca's unauthorized investment targets, covering their potential losses from his own savings. Some bridges, it seemed, could be rebuilt through accountability and restitution. The city lights flickered outside my window as day turned to evening. Each light represented not just a home, but a set of professional relationships built on trust and integrity. My emergency fund remained secure, but its significance had evolved. It now stood as a symbol of professional ethics maintained in the face of personal pressure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The SEC investigation would proceed, more families would come forward, and the full scope of Rebecca's actions would continue to unfold. But tonight, I understood that sometimes the most valuable emergency fund isn't the money in your account. It's the professional integrity that allows you to face yourself in the mirror each morning. The Securities and Exchange Commission's Chicago office occupied several floors of a steel and glass building downtown. I sat in a conference room on the 32nd floor, surrounded by regulatory officials and their counsel. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished table, where documents detailing Rebecca's unauthorized activities lay spread out in meticulous order. Senior investigator Elizabeth Warren, no relation to the senator, as she had wryly noted, led the questioning. Her reputation for thoroughness preceded her, and she lived up to it with each precisely worded inquiry. Ms. Wells, walk us through when you first became aware of your sister's attempts to leverage your professional credentials. For the next 2 hours, I detailed every discovery, every document, every attempted breach of professional ethics. The SEC team paid particular attention to the pattern of Rebecca targeting vulnerable populations through her position as an educator. What's particularly concerning, investigator Warren noted, is the sophisticated nature of these attempts. This wasn't merely opportunistic fraud. There was a systematic approach to exploiting regulatory blind spots. As she spoke, her assistant distributed a new set of documents, financial records we hadn't previously seen. They revealed a network of small investment clubs Rebecca had established among school staff members, each one operating just below the threshold that would trigger regulatory oversight. These clubs were structured to fly under our radar, Warren explained. The individual investment amounts were kept deliberately low, but the aggregate pattern suggests a sophisticated understanding of regulatory thresholds. The revelation struck me with particular force. Rebecca had not only betrayed my trust, but had also studied regulatory frameworks well enough to exploit their limitations. The very knowledge she had gained from our childhood conversations about my work had been turned into tools for deception. During a brief recess, I received an unexpected call from Marcus Chen. "Kate, we've completed our internal audit. There's something else you should know." He paused, his usual confidence tempered by concern. "We found evidence that Rebecca attempted to access our client management system during the firm's annual charity gala last year, the one where she was your +1. The memory of that evening shifted painfully in my mind. While I had been giving a speech about financial literacy and community responsibility, my sister had apparently been attempting to breach our firm's security protocols. The layers of betrayal seemed endless. When the SEC interview resumed, investigator Warren turned to the potential impact on my professional standing. "Ms. Wells, your prompt reporting and cooperation have been noted. However, we need to understand why these unauthorized attempts weren't detected earlier." My response was measured, drawing on years of professional experience. The personal nature of the relationship created blind spots. I trusted family bonds over professional protocols, a mistake I won't repeat. This experience has taught me that maintaining professional boundaries isn't just about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting every client who trusts us with their financial future. Warren nodded, making a note in her file. "We'll be recommending new guidelines for firms regarding family member access and credential security. Your case may help prevent similar situations in the future." As the interview concluded, I received another text from my mother. "The SEC investigation? Really? You're going to let them prosecute your own sister?" I thought carefully before responding. "Mom, this isn't about prosecution. It's about protecting people who trust financial professionals with their futures. Rebecca didn't just betray me. She betrayed every principle of financial responsibility we're supposed to uphold." Later that evening, I met with Dr. Sarah Martinez for coffee. The cafe was quiet, offering a respite from the intensity of the day's proceedings. "You know," she said, stirring her cappuccino thoughtfully, "what's remarkable isn't just that you maintained your professional integrity through all this. It's that you're turning a personal crisis into an opportunity for systemic improvement." She was right. The SEC's new guidelines, our firm's enhanced security protocols, the case study for the ethics committee, each element represented a chance to strengthen the foundations of financial trust. My emergency fund remained untouched, but its significance had evolved yet again. It now represented not just personal financial security or professional integrity, but a commitment to protecting the entire financial system's trustworthiness. As I drove home that evening, the city skyline glittered with possibility. Each building housed countless professionals making daily choices between expedience and ethics, between personal loyalty and professional responsibility. My story would become part of the industry's collective wisdom, helping others navigate similar challenges. Tomorrow would bring more interviews, more discoveries, more difficult conversations. But tonight, I understood that true financial security isn't just about maintaining an emergency fund. It's about building and protecting a system of trust that benefits everyone who participates in it. 1 month after the SEC investigation began, I received a certified letter from Rebecca's new attorney. The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I opened the envelope, casting a warm glow on the crisp legal document inside. The letter contained an unexpected proposal. Rebecca wanted to make a full confession and provide complete documentation of all her financial activities in exchange for consideration in the regulatory proceedings. Marcus Chen and I reviewed the offer in his corner office, where the Chicago skyline served as a backdrop to our discussion. This could be significant, he noted, studying the detailed outline of Rebecca's proposed disclosure. She's offering information about financial schemes we hadn't even uncovered yet. The document revealed a sophisticated network of unauthorized investment activities that extended beyond the school system. Rebecca had apparently created a parallel financial advisory service, using my credentials and reputation to establish credibility with various community organizations, including several local churches and small business associations. The scope is broader than we anticipated, I acknowledged, maintaining my professional composure despite the personal impact of these revelations. But this could help us protect more people and strengthen our industry's safeguards. Later. That afternoon, I met with Investigator Warren at the SEC offices to discuss the development. Her office, with its walls of regulatory texts and financial journals, felt like a sanctuary of order amid the chaos of the past months. Your sister's cooperation could help us implement more effective preventive measures, Warren explained, reviewing the proposal. But I'm curious about your perspective, Ms. Wells. This disclosure will likely reveal even more instances where your professional reputation was compromised. I considered her words carefully before responding. My reputation was built on integrity and transparency. If exposing these breaches helps prevent future violations and protects more investors, then that aligns perfectly with my professional values. The next day brought an unexpected visitor to my office, Thomas, carrying a thick folder and a determined expression. I found these while cleaning out our old home office, he explained, placing the folder on my desk. They're records of every financial scheme Rebecca attempted but abandoned. I thought they might help complete the picture. The documents revealed dozens of half-started investment clubs, abandoned fraud attempts, and rejected loan applications. Each piece of a paper represented a path not taken, a scheme interrupted by some remnant of conscience or fear of discovery. That evening, I received a call from Dr. Sarah Martinez. I heard about Rebecca's offer to cooperate, she said. How are you processing this? It feels like the end of something, I replied, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of old, but also the beginning of something more important. Transformation often works that way, she observed. Sometimes the greatest growth comes from our most painful experiences. The next week brought a series of meetings with industry regulators, compliance officers, and ethics committees. Rebecca's disclosures had sparked a broader conversation about family-related financial fraud and the need for enhanced protective measures. Morgan Stanley's board of directors invited me to lead a task force on preventing credential abuse and protecting vulnerable investors. The assignment represented a professional evolution, turning personal pain into industry-wide improvement. My parents finally reached out, their perspective shifted by the magnitude of Rebecca's revelations. We didn't want to see it, my father admitted during a difficult phone call. We thought protecting family meant hiding the truth. You showed us it means something very different. The emergency fund remained intact, its value now measured not just in dollars but in the ER's principles it represented. Each time I reviewed the balance, I was reminded of the choice between enabling and empowering, between short-term peace and long-term integrity. Rebecca's formal confession was scheduled for the following week. The night before, she sent me an email, the first direct communication we'd had in months. "I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me all these years. True financial security isn't about quick gains or clever schemes. It's about building trust and maintaining integrity. I'm sorry it took losing everything to learn that lesson." As I prepared the final report for the SEC, I reflected on the journey from that first desperate phone call about the emergency fund to the industry-wide changes now taking shape. The personal cost had been high, but the professional impact would help protect countless investors from similar schemes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities for growth. But today, I understood that the most valuable emergency fund isn't just the money we save. It's the integrity we maintain, the boundaries we respect, and the positive change we create from our most challenging experiences. 6 months after Rebecca's confession, I stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Chicago Financial Center, addressing the annual summit on financial ethics and security. The room was filled with industry leaders, regulatory officials, and financial professionals from across the country. The morning light filtered through the ornate windows, illuminating the attentive faces before me. "Financial security isn't just about protecting assets," I began, my voice steady and clear. "It's about maintaining the trust that forms the foundation of our entire industry." The presentation I was delivering outlined the comprehensive security protocols that had emerged from our experience, what was now being called the Wells Framework for preventing credential abuse and protecting vulnerable investors. In the front row, Marcus Chen nodded approvingly. His support had been instrumental in transforming a personal crisis into institutional change. Beside him sat investigator Warren, whose regulatory insights had helped shape the new protective measures. The framework we'd developed together went beyond simple security upgrades. It represented a fundamental shift in how financial institutions approached family-related risks. "The most dangerous threats to financial integrity often come from those closest to us," I continued, advancing to the next slide. "Not because they're malicious, but because our natural inclination to trust family can blind us to warning signs we'd never miss in professional contexts." The presentation detailed the systematic changes implemented at Morgan Stanley and now being adopted by other major financial institutions. Enhanced verification protocols, regular credential audits, and new guidelines for handling family-related accounts were just the beginning. We'd also developed comprehensive training programs to help financial advisors recognize and respond to potential family-based fraud attempts. During the Q&A session that followed, a young financial advisor raised her hand. "Ms. Wells, how do you balance professional obligations with family loyalty when the two conflict?" The question touched the heart of everything we'd learned. "Professional integrity and true family loyalty are not opposites," I responded. "Real loyalty means helping our loved ones maintain ethical standards, not enabling them to bypass them. Sometimes the most caring thing we can do is maintain firm boundaries." After the presentation, I met with a group of compliance officers who were implementing the Wells Framework at their institutions. One of them, a veteran with decades of experience, shook my head in admiration. "We've been trying to address these issues for years," he said. "It took someone willing to share their personal experience to finally break through the institutional resistance." Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Thomas. He had started a support group for spouses and family members affected by financial fraud, using his experience to help others recognize and address warning signs early. "Your strength in maintaining boundaries showed me it was possible to choose integrity over enabling," he wrote. "Now, I'm trying to pass that lesson on." The emergency fund that had started this journey remained untouched, but its influence had multiplied far beyond its monetary value. The principles it represented, financial responsibility, professional integrity, and the courage to maintain boundaries, had sparked changes throughout the industry. My parents, who had initially seen my actions as a betrayal of family loyalty, had undergone their own transformation. They now participated in financial literacy workshops at their community center, sharing their story as a cautionary tale about the importance of maintaining healthy financial boundaries, even within families. Rebecca's journey had taken its own unexpected turn. After serving the consequences of her actions, she had begun working with a nonprofit organization that helped people recover from financial fraud. Her firsthand experience, combined with genuine remorse and a desire to make amends, made her uniquely qualified to help others avoid similar paths. That evening, as I prepared for a dinner meeting with the task force implementing the next phase of security protocols, I received a message from Dr. Sarah Martinez. "Your emergency fund protected more than just your finances," she wrote. "It became a symbol of the boundaries we all need to maintain, not just in our bank accounts, but in our professional and personal lives." The city lights twinkled outside my office window, each one representing countless financial decisions being made in homes and offices across Chicago. Thanks to the changes we'd implemented, more of those decisions would be protected by stronger safeguards and clearer boundaries. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to strengthen the system further. But today, I understood that true financial security isn't just about maintaining an emergency fund. It's about creating a framework of integrity that protects everyone's financial future. Sometimes, the most valuable legacy we can leave isn't the money we save, but the principles we uphold and the positive changes we inspire in others. 1 year after implementing the Wells framework, I sat in my newly renovated office on the 35th floor, reviewing the annual impact report. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the cityscape, illuminating the physical changes in my professional space. Walls now adorned with framed copies of the security protocols that had transformed our industry, alongside thank you letters from professionals and clients whose financial futures had been protected by our new safeguards. A knock at my door interrupted my review. Sandra Chen, now heading our expanded credential security division, entered with fresh data. "The numbers are remarkable, Kate," she said, spreading charts across my desk. "Attempted family-related credential. Fraud has dropped by 78% across firms that implemented the framework. But here's the really interesting part. Voluntary reporting of potential security breaches has increased by 200%. The statistics told a story of cultural transformation. Financial professionals were no longer hiding potential family conflicts out of shame or misplaced loyalty. Instead, they were addressing them proactively, using our guidelines to maintain healthy boundaries before crisis struck. My intercom buzzed, Marcus Chen requesting my presence in the conference room. I found him meeting with representatives from 3 major international banks, all interested in implementing the Wells framework globally. The room hummed with energy as we discussed adapting our protocols for different cultural contexts where family obligations often carried even stronger social pressure. "The beauty of your approach," noted Julian Martinez, head of security for a major European bank, "is that it acknowledges the emotional complexity of family financial relationships while providing clear, actionable boundaries. We're not just preventing fraud, we're changing how people think about financial responsibility within families." During a break in the meetings, I received an unexpected email from Rebecca's former school district. They had used their experience to develop a new financial literacy curriculum for high school students, incorporating real-world examples of how emotional manipulation can lead to financial compromise. They wanted me to review the material and possibly speak at their teacher training session. The invitation represented everything we'd hoped to achieve, turning painful experiences into educational opportunities. I thought about how far we'd come from that first desperate phone call about the emergency fund. What had started as a personal boundary had evolved into a movement for financial integrity. Later that afternoon, I met with a young financial advisor who had recently prevented a significant fraud attempt by her brother. "Your story gave me the courage to say no," she explained, tears in her eyes. "I always thought loving my family meant helping them no matter what. Now I understand that true love sometimes means maintaining boundaries." My emergency fund remained intact, its balance now significantly increased through careful management and continued discipline. But its true value had multiplied far beyond mere dollars. It had become a symbol of professional integrity, a teaching tool for future generations of financial advisors, and a reminder that one person's stand for principles can catalyze industry-wide change. That evening, I received an invitation to keynote the National Financial Ethics Convention. The topic they wanted me to address: building a legacy of integrity, how personal boundaries create professional excellence. As I considered the invitation, my phone lit up with a text from Dr. Sarah Martinez. Remember when you thought maintaining your emergency fund was just about protecting your finances? Look at the ripple effect you've created. She was right. Every decision to maintain boundaries, every choice to prioritize integrity over expedience, had contributed to something larger than myself. The Wells framework wasn't just a set of security protocols. It was a blueprint for maintaining professional ethics in the face of personal pressure. My parents, once skeptical of my choices, had become advocates for financial boundaries within their retirement community. They now led workshops helping other parents understand how enabling financial irresponsibility can harm rather than help their adult children. Their journey from criticism to understanding had its own ripple effect, showing others that it's never too late to embrace healthier financial relationships. As the day drew to a close, I stood at my office window, watching the city transition from day to night. Each light represented not just a home or office, but a web of financial relationships now better protected by the standards we'd established. The emergency fund that had started this journey had evolved into something far more valuable, a legacy of integrity that would protect countless financial futures. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to strengthen our protocols and expand their reach. But today, I understood that true success isn't measured just in dollars saved or fraud prevented. It's measured in the lives improved, the boundaries respected, and the professional standards elevated. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the example we set for others, showing that maintaining integrity, even at great personal cost, creates ripples of positive change that extend far beyond our own lives. 18 months after the Wells Framework's implementation, an unexpected opportunity emerged that would test and strengthen everything we'd built. I arrived at my office one morning to find Marcus Chen waiting with Elizabeth Warren from the CC and a delegation from Silicon Valley's largest financial technology companies. They've identified a potential vulnerability in digital banking that mirrors the family credential issues we addressed, Marcus explained, as we settled into the conference room overlooking the Chicago River. They want us to adapt the framework for the digital age. The technology executives shared alarming data about a new trend: family members using shared devices and saved passwords to access digital financial services. The intimacy of family relationships was creating blind spots in even the most sophisticated security systems. Traditional two-factor authentication fails when people share devices and households, explained Dr. Aisha Patel, head of security at a major fintech firm. We need something that addresses the human element, the emotional manipulation that makes people lower their digital guards for family members. The challenge energized me. This wasn't just about protecting credentials anymore. It was about evolving our understanding of financial boundaries for a digital world. I thought about how Rebecca had exploited personal connections to gain access to professional systems. How different was that from a family member using shared Netflix passwords to access financial accounts? We need to create a new category of security protocols, I proposed, moving to the whiteboard. Something that distinguishes between healthy family financial cooperation and potential exploitation. For the next several hours, we brainstormed what would become the Digital Wells Protocol, a set of guidelines that would help financial institutions identify and prevent family-based digital fraud while promoting healthy financial relationships within families. During a break, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. He had started consulting with tech companies on user psychology and financial applications. "Your framework helped me understand why people make poor financial decisions for family," he explained. "Now I'm helping design interfaces that encourage healthy boundaries from the start." The synchronicity was striking. As we worked to adapt the Wells framework for digital platforms, I realized we were creating something entirely new, a methodology that didn't just react to fraud, but actively promoted financial health within families. Later that afternoon, I met with a group of young software engineers who would be implementing the technical aspects of our new protocols. Their enthusiasm was contagious as they showed me prototypes of apps that would help families maintain healthy financial boundaries while still supporting legitimate cooperation. "See how the app distinguishes between regular transactions and potential pressure points?" one engineer demonstrated. "It's like having a financial boundaries coach in your pocket." The implications extended far beyond fraud prevention. We were creating tools that could help families build stronger, healthier financial relationships from the ground up. The emergency fund that had started this journey was evolving once again, its principles being encoded into the very technology people used to manage their money. That evening, I received an email from Rebecca. She had been invited to beta test one of the new applications, using her experience to identify potential manipulation tactics. "It's strange being on this side of the equation," she wrote, "but it feels right, using my mistakes to help protect others." Dr. Sarah Martinez visited my office the next day, reviewing our progress with the characteristic insight that had guided me through the original crisis. "You're not just preventing fraud anymore," she observed. "You're creating a new language for financial relationships, one that respects both connection and boundaries." The city lights twinkled beyond my window as we discussed the future implications of our work. Each light represented not just a home or office, but a complex web of financial relationships that our new protocols could help protect and nurture. My emergency fund, still secure after all this time, had become more than a personal safety net or even a symbol of professional integrity. It had sparked a revolution in how we think about family financial relationships in the digital age. As I prepared for the next day's meetings, I reflected on how far we'd come from that first desperate phone call. What had started as a simple boundary, protecting my emergency fund from a sister's demands, had evolved into a comprehensive framework for maintaining healthy financial relationships in an increasingly connected world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt our protocols for the digital age. But today, I understood that true innovation isn't just about creating new technology. It's about understanding the human heart well enough to protect it from its own best intentions. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the wisdom to recognize that boundaries and love can coexist, even in our most intimate relationships. 2 years after the initial crisis, I found myself standing in the grand auditorium of the World Financial Summit in Singapore, preparing to address representatives from 50 countries. The morning sun filtered through the vast windows, reflecting off the ultra-modern architecture that characterized the city's financial district. "Financial boundaries know no cultural borders," I began, addressing the diverse audience before me. "But how we maintain them must respect cultural differences." The presentation outlined how the digital Wells protocol had been adapted for various cultural contexts, from societies where family financial obligations were deeply ingrained to those where individual financial independence was the norm. During the Q&A session, a banker from Mumbai raised his hand. "In our culture, family financial support is not just expected, it's sacred. How can we implement these protocols without disrespecting these values?" It was a question that touched the heart of our recent work. "The goal isn't to prevent family support," I explained, "but to ensure it's truly supportive rather than destructive. We've found that clear boundaries actually enable more sustainable forms of family assistance." Later that day, I met with a group of women entrepreneurs from various Asian countries who had implemented modified versions of the Wells framework in their businesses. Their stories revealed how our protocols had helped them navigate the complex intersection of family obligations and business growth. In my culture, saying no to family is almost unthinkable, shared Li Wei, a successful fintech CEO from Shanghai. But your framework gave me the language to set boundaries while still honoring family ties. We've actually strengthened our relationships by being clear about financial limits. During a break between sessions, I received an unexpected video call from Rebecca. She was speaking at a conference in London, sharing her story with European financial institutions implementing the Digital Wells Protocol. "Remember when you said boundaries and love can coexist?" she said. "I'm finally understanding what that means in practice." The summit also brought a surprise reunion with Thomas, who had been invited to present his research on psychological factors in family financial manipulation. His work had evolved into a comprehensive study of how digital interfaces could either enable or prevent financial exploitation within families. "Your stand for integrity didn't just save your emergency fund," he told me over coffee in the summit's networking area. "It sparked a global conversation about healthy financial relationships. That's a legacy that will outlive any bank account." The afternoon sessions focused on the technical implementation of our digital protocols. Development teams from major financial institutions demonstrated how they'd integrated our guidelines into their security systems. One presentation showed how machine learning algorithms could now detect patterns of family-based financial pressure before they escalated into fraud. "The system doesn't just prevent unauthorized access," explained Dr. Patel, who had become a key partner in developing the digital aspects of our framework. "It actively promotes healthy financial behaviors within families. When we detect potential pressure patterns, it triggers educational resources and support options." As the day progressed, I participated in a panel discussion with financial regulators from different continents. The conversation revealed how our work had influenced policy discussions about family financial relationships globally. Countries were beginning to recognize that protecting individual financial boundaries strengthened rather than weakened family ties. That evening, at a dinner hosted by the Singapore Financial Authority, I sat next to an elderly Japanese banker who had spent decades studying family businesses. "Your framework," he said thoughtfully, "has given us a new way to think about an ancient problem. How do we honor family bonds while protecting financial integrity?" The next morning brought news that would take our work in an unexpected direction. The United Nations Financial Inclusion Initiative wanted to adapt the Wells framework for microfinance programs in developing countries. They saw our protocols as a way to protect vulnerable borrowers from family-based financial exploitation, while preserving cultural values around family support. As I prepared to board my flight back to Chicago, I received a message from Dr. Sarah Martinez. She had been following the summit coverage online. From a single emergency fund to a global movement for financial integrity, never underestimate the power of standing firm in your principles. The city lights of Singapore twinkled below as my plane took off, each light representing countless families who might benefit from our work. The emergency fund that had started this journey had protected more than just my financial security. It had catalyzed a worldwide conversation about how to maintain healthy financial relationships in an interconnected world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt our protocols for different cultural contexts. But today, I understood that true financial wisdom isn't just about protecting our own resources. It's about creating frameworks that help others maintain healthy financial boundaries while honoring their cultural values. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the example we set for others, showing that principles of financial integrity can unite rather than divide us across cultural boundaries. 2.5 years after that first confrontation over my emergency fund, I found myself back in Milwaukee, but under very different circumstances. The local community college had transformed its financial literacy program using principles from the Wells framework, and they'd invited me to see the results firsthand. The campus buzzed with energy as students filed into the newly established Center for Financial Integrity and Family Relations. Professor Maria Rodriguez, who headed the program, greeted me with enthusiasm. "What you're about to see," she said, leading me through the halls, "is how your framework has evolved beyond just preventing fraud. It's changing how a new generation thinks about money and relationships." In the main classroom, students from diverse backgrounds shared their experiences implementing financial boundaries within their families. One young woman's story particularly caught my attention. "My parents always said taking care of family means giving them whatever they need," she explained. "But through this program, I learned that true care sometimes means saying no. I helped my brother set up his own emergency fund instead of just giving him money. Now he's teaching others in our community to do the same." The ripple effect was evident. What had started as my personal stand for financial boundaries had transformed into a movement empowering others to build healthier financial relationships. The emergency fund concept had evolved from a simple savings account into a teaching tool for financial independence. During lunch, I received an unexpected call from Rebecca. She was developing a program for high school teachers based on her experiences, helping them identify and address signs of financial pressure among their students. "Remember when I thought you were being cruel by protecting your emergency fund?" she said. "Now I'm teaching others that boundaries are a form of love." The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Thomas, who had been invited to speak about psychological resilience in financial decisions. We found ourselves co-presenting. To a packed auditorium, our past conflict transformed into a powerful lesson about maintaining integrity under pressure. "The Wells framework isn't just about money," Thomas told the audience. "It's about understanding that healthy relationships require both support and boundaries. Sometimes the most caring thing we can do is help others develop their own financial strength." Later, in a small breakout session, I met with first-generation college students struggling to balance family obligations with financial independence. Their stories echoed aspects of my own journey, but with unique challenges I hadn't faced. "In my culture," one student shared, "refusing to share money with family is seen as rejecting your heritage. But your framework helped me show my parents that building generational wealth requires some temporary boundaries." The day's events culminated in the unveiling of a new initiative, the Emergency Fund Project, a community-based program helping families build financial security while maintaining healthy relationships. The project would provide both practical support and emotional guidance, addressing the complex intersection of money and family dynamics. As I prepared to leave campus, Professor Rodriguez shared some remarkable statistics. Since implementing the program, they'd seen a 65% increase in students establishing emergency funds and a 40% decrease in reported family financial conflicts. But the most significant change was in how students viewed financial boundaries, not as barriers to family loyalty, but as tools for building stronger relationships. That evening, I met with Dr. Sarah Martinez at a local cafe. The same cafe where, years ago, I had confronted Rebecca about her financial deceptions. Now it served as a reminder of how far we'd all come. "You know what's remarkable?" Dr. Martinez observed, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "Your emergency fund protected more than just your finances. It sparked a movement that's helping others protect their dreams, their independence, and their family relationships." My phone buzzed with a message from the United Nations Financial Inclusion Team. They wanted to expand our program to include refugee communities, helping displaced families rebuild financial security while maintaining healthy boundaries in high-stress situations. As night fell over Milwaukee, I stood at my hotel window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Each light represented a home, a family, potentially benefiting from the principles that had emerged from my personal crisis. The emergency fund that had caused such conflict had evolved into something far more valuable, a blueprint for building financial independence while strengthening family bonds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt and expand our programs. But today, I understood that true financial wisdom isn't just about protecting our own resources. It's about creating frameworks that help others build their own financial security while maintaining healthy relationships. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the knowledge we share, showing others that financial independence and family loyalty can strengthen rather than diminish each other. 3 years after the initial crisis, my emergency fund story took an unexpected turn when I received an invitation to speak at a technology conference in Austin. Not about finance or family boundaries, but about artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence in financial decision-making. The conference center hummed with innovation as tech entrepreneurs and AI developers gathered to discuss the future of financial technology. Dr. Aisha Patel, now leading a major AI ethics initiative, introduced me to a packed auditorium. The Wells framework wasn't just about preventing fraud, she explained. It revealed something fundamental about how emotions influence financial decisions. Now, we're using those insights to develop AI systems that can recognize and respond to emotional patterns in financial behavior. The presentation that followed showcased how principles from my experience were being integrated into AI-driven financial advisory systems. Engineers had analyzed the patterns of family financial pressure I'd documented and created algorithms that could identify similar situations before they escalated into crisis. During the demo session, a young developer showed me an app they'd created. "We call it the Boundary Builder," she explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "It uses the emotional intelligence principles from your framework to help users navigate financial decisions involving family members." The app didn't just track spending or set budgets. It recognized patterns of emotional manipulation in financial requests and provided users with strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries while preserving relationships. One feature particularly caught my attention: a module that helped users practice saying no to financial requests while expressing care for the relationship. Later that day, I participated in a panel discussion with behavioral economists and AI ethicists. The conversation revealed how my personal story had influenced thinking about the role of emotions in financial technology. Traditional financial AI focused solely on numbers, noted Dr. C. James Chen, a leading AI ethicist. The Wells framework showed us that emotional intelligence is just as crucial for financial health as mathematical calculations. During a break, I received an unexpected video call from Rebecca. She was working with a team developing virtual reality simulations for financial education, using our family's story to help others recognize and respond to financial pressure tactics. "Remember when I tried to use emotional manipulation to access your emergency fund?" she said, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "Now I'm helping create technology that protects others from those same tactics. It's a strange kind of redemption." The afternoon sessions brought another surprise. A group of social workers presented research showing how principles from the Wells framework were being used to help domestic violence survivors achieve financial independence. They had adapted our protocols to create safe pathways for establishing emergency funds while maintaining security from financial abuse. "Your story showed us that financial boundaries aren't just about money," explained Maria Hernandez, the lead researcher. "They're about personal safety and empowerment. We're now using these principles to help vulnerable individuals build financial security while protecting themselves from exploitation." That evening, at a dinner hosted by the conference organizers, I sat next to a quantum computing specialist who saw unexpected parallels between quantum encryption and emotional boundaries. In financial relationships, in quantum encryption, observing the system changes it, he explained. Similarly, your framework showed how awareness of financial boundaries fundamentally changes family dynamics. We're now exploring how to build these principles into next-generation financial security systems. As the conference wound down, I received news that would take our work in yet another unexpected direction. A major gaming company wanted to incorporate principles from the Wells framework into educational games teaching financial literacy to children. Imagine teaching kids about healthy financial boundaries through interactive storytelling, the creative director pitched. We can help them develop these skills before they face real-world pressure. Later that night, in my hotel room overlooking Austin's vibrant cityscape, I reflected on how far the impact of my emergency fund had spread. What began as a personal boundary had evolved into a framework for technological innovation, social change, and educational reform. My phone lit up with a message from Dr. Sarah Martinez. Who would have thought your stand for financial boundaries would influence the development of artificial intelligence? Sometimes the biggest impacts come from the most personal decisions. The city lights below seemed to pulse with possibility. Each light represented not just a home or office, but a potential application of these principles in ways I never could have imagined. The emergency fund that had caused such family conflict had become a catalyst for innovation across multiple fields. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to explore these unexpected applications. But today, I understood that true innovation often comes from personal experience translated into universal principles. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the wisdom we gain from standing firm in our values, wisdom that can transform not just our own lives but entire fields of human endeavor. 3.5 years after that first confrontation over my emergency fund, I found myself in an unexpected setting. A community center in Detroit's revitalization district. The building, once abandoned, now housed the Financial Empowerment Hub, a pilot program implementing the Wells framework at the grassroots level. Sarah Jackson, a former factory worker turned financial counselor, greeted me with a warm smile. "What you're about to see," she said, leading me through the bustling center, "is how your framework changes lives in communities where financial pressure isn't just emotional, it's survival." The main room buzzed with activity. Community. Members gathered in small groups, sharing stories and strategies. A young woman named Maya stood up to speak, her voice steady despite the emotion in her words. 6 months ago, I was sleeping on my sister's couch, giving her my whole paycheck because family helps family, Maya explained. Through this program, I learned that true family support means helping each other grow stronger, not enabling dependency. Today, I have my own emergency fund, my own apartment, and my sister and I have a healthier relationship than ever. The transformation wasn't just individual. Entire family networks were evolving. Parents who had once demanded their children's paychecks now attended workshops on building generational wealth through financial independence. Siblings who had relied on emotional manipulation to access money were learning to develop their own financial stability. During lunch, I received an unexpected call from Marcus Chen. "Kate, something remarkable is happening in Chicago's South." "Side," he said. "Remember those community banking protocols we developed? They're being used to create neighborhood emergency fund cooperatives. People are pooling resources while maintaining individual boundaries." The afternoon brought me to a session with former gang members who had transformed their understanding of loyalty through the framework. On the streets, demanding money from family was about power, one participant shared. "Now I understand that real power comes from helping each other build financial independence." Later, I observed a teenager named James teaching his grandmother how to use the Boundary Builder app we'd developed. "See, Grandma? When someone makes you feel guilty about money, you can tap here for scripts on how to say no while showing love. It's like having a financial boundaries coach in your pocket." The day's most powerful moment came during a group therapy session for families recovering from financial trauma. Rebecca had flown in to share her story, but this time from a new perspective. "I used to think love meant having unlimited access to family resources," she told the group. Now, I help others understand that love means respecting boundaries and supporting growth. The sister I tried to manipulate taught me that sometimes no is the most caring word we can say. As evening approached, I met with the center's research team. They shared data showing how implementing the framework had reduced family financial conflicts by 60% in participating communities. But the most striking statistic wasn't about money, it was about relationships. Families reported stronger, more authentic connections when financial boundaries were clear and respected. Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had been quietly observing throughout the day, pulled me aside. "You know what's remarkable?" she said. "Your emergency fund didn't just protect your finances, it sparked a movement that's helping people redefine family loyalty in healthier ways." My phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. His support group for partners affected by family financial manipulation had gone national. "Your stand for boundaries gave others permission to protect themselves," he wrote. "Now they're helping even more people break free from toxic financial relationships." As night fell over Detroit, I stood in the center's rooftop garden, where community members grew vegetables to share. Each plot had clear boundaries but was part of a larger, thriving ecosystem, a perfect metaphor for healthy financial relationships. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing a home where these principles might take root. The emergency fund that had caused such conflict in my family had evolved into a tool for community transformation, helping others find the courage to maintain healthy financial boundaries while strengthening their most important relationships. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt the framework for different community needs. But today, I understood that true financial empowerment isn't just about protecting our own resources. It's about creating environments where everyone can build financial security while maintaining healthy relationships. Sometimes the most valuable emergency fund is the wisdom we share with others, showing them that financial boundaries and community support can coexist and strengthen each other. 4 years after protecting my emergency fund from Rebecca's demands, I found myself testifying before a congressional committee on financial literacy and family dynamics. The marble halls of Capitol Hill seemed a world away from that first confrontation in my office, yet the principles remained the same. Financial boundaries aren't just personal choices, I explained to the assembled lawmakers. They're foundational to healthy families and communities. The hearing room sat silent as I shared how our framework had transformed from a personal stand for integrity into a blueprint for national policy. Senator Maria Ramirez, who had championed financial literacy legislation, leaned forward. "Ms. Wells, we've seen the data from communities implementing your framework. Can you explain how personal boundaries create societal change?" Before I could respond, the committee heard testimony from an unexpected witness, a former payday loan operator turned consumer advocate. "I used to profit from family financial pressure," he admitted. "The Wells framework doesn't just help individuals say no to manipulation. It disrupts predatory systems that target family relationships." During a break in the proceedings, I received news that would take our work in an unprecedented direction. The Department of Education was considering incorporating the Wells framework into high school curriculum standards nationwide. The goal: teaching students about healthy financial boundaries before they face real-world pressure. Dr. James Chen, now advising the Education Initiative, shared the vision over lunch. "Imagine a generation growing up understanding that love and financial boundaries aren't opposites," he said. "We could fundamentally change how families interact with money." The afternoon session brought testimony from community leaders implementing the framework. Sarah Jackson from Detroit's Financial Empowerment Hub presented compelling statistics. Neighborhoods with framework-based programs showed significant decreases in predatory lending and increases in small business formation. "When people learn to maintain financial boundaries," Sarah explained, "they don't just protect their savings, they create space for entrepreneurship and community investment." As the hearing continued, my phone lit up with a message from Rebecca. She was in California, working with state legislators to develop protective policies for teachers facing financial pressure from students' families. Her personal experience had become a powerful tool for systemic change. The most moving testimony came from Maya, the young woman I'd met at Detroit's community center. She described how the framework had helped her escape a cycle of financial dependency and build a sustainable future. "My emergency fund isn't just about money," she told the committee. "It's about having the power to help others without destroying myself." Now I teach other young women in my community to do the same. During the evening recess, I met with policy analysts who had studied the framework's impact across different socioeconomic groups. Their findings revealed something remarkable. When people learned to maintain healthy financial boundaries, they became more likely to engage in community support, not less. "It's counterintuitive," explained Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had conducted the research. Many worried that promoting financial boundaries would decrease family support. Instead, we're seeing more sustainable, healthy forms of assistance emerging. The next day brought meetings with Treasury Department officials interested in incorporating framework principles into federal financial literacy programs. Their focus wasn't just on preventing fraud. They saw the potential for creating more resilient financial communities. "Your emergency fund story showed us something crucial," the deputy secretary explained. "Financial health isn't just about individual choices. It's about creating environments where healthy choices are supported and protected." As evening fell over Washington, I stood on the steps of the Capitol, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of possibility. Each star emerging in the darkening sky represented a potential life changed by these policies, a family strengthened by healthy boundaries. My phone buzzed with messages from around the country, community leaders, educators, and financial professionals sharing stories of how the framework had influenced their work. The emergency fund that had once caused such family conflict had evolved into a catalyst for national policy change. Thomas sent a particularly poignant note. "Remember when we thought this was just about protecting your savings? Now it's about protecting everyone's right to financial health." Tomorrow would bring more hearings, more policy discussions, more opportunities to expand the framework's impact. But today, I understood that true change happens when personal principles align with public good. Sometimes the most valuable emergency fund is the example we set, showing that standing firm in our values can transform not just our own lives, but the very systems that shape our society. 5 years had passed since that pivotal moment when I'd refused to compromise my emergency fund, and I found myself back in Milwaukee, though under very different circumstances. The University of Wisconsin had invited me to deliver the commencement address at their School of Business, focusing on financial ethics and family dynamics. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of graduating faces, I couldn't help but reflect on how a single principled decision had catalyzed such profound change. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation, filled with not just graduates and their families, but also financial professionals, community leaders, and even a few faces I hadn't expected to see. In the front row, Dr. Sarah Martinez sat beside Marcus Chen, both having flown in to support this moment. But it was the figure sitting quietly in the back corner that caught my attention. Rebecca, her presence both surprising and symbolic. "When I started my career in finance," I began, my voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside, "I thought success was measured purely in numbers, portfolio growth, client retention, assets under management. But life has a way of teaching us its most profound lessons through our most challenging moments." The story I shared wasn't just about protecting an emergency fund. It was about the ripple effects of maintaining integrity in the face of immense personal pressure. I described how our framework had evolved from a personal boundary into a global movement for financial ethical practice, but with a new twist that I hadn't shared publicly before. Last month, I revealed, our firm launched the Financial Redemption Initiative, a program specifically designed to help those who've previously engaged in financial manipulation rebuild their lives through ethical practices. I paused, making brief eye contact with Rebecca in the back. Because sometimes, the people who can teach us the most about financial integrity are those who once struggled to maintain it. The initiative had been Rebecca's idea, born from her own journey of transformation. After completing her rehabilitation program and making amends, she'd approached me with a proposal: use her experience to help others recognize and overcome patterns of financial manipulation. The program would combine practical financial education with emotional intelligence training, helping participants understand the psychological patterns that led to boundary violations. True redemption, I continued, isn't just about making amends. It's about transforming our hardest lessons into wisdom that benefits others. I shared how the initiative had already helped dozens of individuals transition from financial manipulation to ethical practice, many of whom were now mentoring others through similar transformations. During the reception that followed, I watched as Rebecca shared her story with a group of young graduates, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. I thought love meant having unlimited access to family resources, she explained. Now I understand that real love means respecting boundaries and supporting growth. The day brought another unexpected development. Thomas, who had been working with corporate ethics departments, announced the launch of a complimentary program focusing on workplace financial boundaries. Your stand for integrity showed me that professional and personal ethics can't be separated, he told the assembled crowd. We're now helping companies create environments where financial boundaries are respected at all levels. Dr. Sarah Martinez joined us later, sharing data from a longitudinal study of professionals who'd implemented the Wells framework in their practices. The most remarkable finding, she noted, isn't just the reduction in financial fraud. It's how maintaining clear boundaries actually strengthens family bonds in the long run. As evening approached, I received news that would take our work in yet another direction. The International Banking Commission had adopted key elements of our framework as part of their global standards for ethical practice. The principles that had emerged from my personal crisis would now help shape financial relationships worldwide. Looking out over the campus grounds where my own financial journey had begun, I felt a profound sense of completion. The emergency fund that had once caused such family conflict had evolved into something far more valuable, a blueprint for ethical financial practice that bridged personal integrity with professional responsibility. Marcus Chen summed it up perfectly during our closing dinner. You didn't just protect your emergency fund, Kate. You created a new paradigm for understanding how personal boundaries and professional ethics intersect. That's a legacy that will continue to grow. Rebecca approached me as the evening wound down, her eyes reflecting both regret and resolve. Thank you, she said simply, for being strong enough to say no when I needed to hear it most. That boundary didn't just protect your emergency fund. It started both of us on a path to something greater. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities as we continued to expand our work. But today, I understood that true redemption isn't just about making amends for past mistakes. It's about transforming those experiences into wisdom that benefits others. Sometimes, the most valuable emergency fund is the courage to maintain boundaries that ultimately lead to everyone's growth. 6 years after standing firm on my emergency fund principles, I found myself in an unexpected position that demonstrated just how far-reaching one principled decision could become. The World Economic Forum in Davos had dedicated an entire session to what they were calling the Wells effect, the phenomenon of how maintaining personal financial boundaries could transform entire economic systems. The morning began with a call that would set the tone for the transformative day ahead. Dr. Sarah Martinez's voice carried an unusual excitement. Kate, the global impact study results are in. The data shows something remarkable. Communities that implemented the Wells framework aren't just seeing reduced financial fraud. They're experiencing a fundamental shift in how wealth circulates through family networks. As I prepared for my keynote address, I reviewed the striking statistics on my tablet. Regions that had adopted our framework were showing unprecedented patterns of sustainable wealth building across generations. Instead of wealth concentration among a few family members who manipulated others, we were seeing more equitable distribution through ethical cooperation. The Grand Conference Hall at Davos hummed with anticipation as I took the stage. Global financial leaders, policymakers, and social innovators had gathered to understand how a personal stand for financial boundaries had sparked a worldwide transformation in family economics. The true power of an emergency fund, I began, looking out at the assembled leaders, isn't in the money it protects, it's in the principles it represents. When we maintain healthy financial boundaries, we create space for authentic prosperity to grow. I shared how our framework had evolved beyond its original scope. What started as a personal boundary had transformed into a model for sustainable economic development. Communities were using our principles to create new forms of cooperative wealth building that respected individual boundaries while fostering collective growth. During the panel discussion that followed, Rebecca joined virtually from Singapore, where she was implementing our latest initiative, the Generational Wealth Ethics Program. Her transformation from someone who had once attempted to breach financial boundaries to a leading advocate for ethical wealth building demonstrated the profound potential for change. Our newest data shows something fascinating, Rebecca explained, to the global audience. When families learn to respect financial boundaries, they actually become more effective at building sustainable wealth together. It's not about isolation. It's about creating healthy patterns of cooperation. The afternoon brought an unexpected announcement from the United Nations Development Program. They had adopted the Wells framework as a cornerstone of their new economic empowerment initiative for developing nations. The principles that had protected my emergency fund would now help communities worldwide build resilient financial systems. Thomas, who had flown in from London where he was heading our European operations, shared groundbreaking research on how maintaining financial boundaries affected brain patterns. We've discovered that when people feel secure in their ability to maintain financial boundaries, they make more innovative decisions about wealth creation. It's not just about protection, it's about creating the psychological safety needed for economic creativity. The day took another significant turn when Marcus Chen revealed our latest technological innovation, an AI-powered platform that helped families implement the Wells framework while respecting cultural differences. We're not just teaching boundaries, he explained. We're helping people discover how their cultural values can strengthen, rather than compromise, financial integrity. During an afternoon workshop, I worked with a group of international development experts to adapt our principles for various cultural contexts. A financial advisor from Japan shared how the framework had helped her clients navigate the complex intersection of family obligation and financial independence. An economist from Brazil described how our principles had transformed how multi-generational households managed resources. The most powerful moment came during an unexpected video conference with a remote village in Kenya, where a women's cooperative had used our framework to revolutionize their local economy. Before, we thought sharing everything was the only way to show love, their leader explained. Now we understand that respecting boundaries creates the foundation for true prosperity. As evening approached, I received news that would take our work in yet another direction. The Nobel Committee had been studying the economic implications of the Wells framework, particularly its role in creating sustainable models of family wealth building. The principles that had emerged from my personal crisis were now being considered as a fundamental theory of behavioral economics. Dr. Sarah Martinez joined me for dinner, bringing with her a comprehensive analysis of how the framework had influenced global economic patterns. "What you've created," she said, reviewing the data, isn't just a set of guidelines for personal boundaries. It's a new paradigm for understanding how human relationships shape economic systems. Looking out over the Swiss Alps from the conference center's terrace, I reflected on how far we'd come from that initial stand for financial integrity. The emergency fund I had protected had sparked a movement that was now helping millions build sustainable prosperity while maintaining healthy relationships. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt our framework for an ever-changing global economy. But today, I understood that true transformation isn't just about maintaining boundaries. It's about showing how those boundaries can create space for everyone to thrive. Sometimes the most valuable emergency fund is the example we set, demonstrating how personal integrity can catalyze systemic change that benefits all. 7 years after that pivotal moment of protecting my emergency fund, I stood in the newly inaugurated Wells Center for Financial Integrity at Stanford University. The autumn sunlight streamed through the building's innovative design, illuminating the space where future generations would learn the principles that had emerged from my personal stand for financial boundaries. The morning began with an unexpected revelation. Dr. Sarah Martinez, now heading the center's research division, shared groundbreaking findings from their decade-long study on financial behavior patterns. "What we've discovered," she explained, displaying complex data visualizations in the center's main auditorium, "is that financial integrity creates a measurable ripple effect across generations. When one person maintains healthy boundaries, they influence financial behaviors in their extended network for up to 3 generations." The implications of this research resonated deeply with the assembled audience of financial leaders, educators, and policymakers. We weren't just protecting individual emergency funds, we were reshaping the financial DNA of entire family trees. Marcus Chen, who had flown in from Singapore where he was implementing our latest initiatives, shared how the principles had evolved in unexpected ways. "The Wells framework isn't just about saying no to financial pressure anymore," he explained. "It's become a blueprint for saying yes to sustainable prosperity that benefits everyone involved." The center's inaugural symposium brought together individuals whose lives had been transformed by these principles. Among them was Maya, the young woman from Detroit's financial empowerment hub, now running her own successful financial education company. "When I first learned about maintaining financial boundaries," she shared, "I thought I was learning to protect my money. Instead, I learned how to protect my potential to create value for others." During the afternoon sessions, Rebecca presented her latest work, a comprehensive study on the psychology of financial transformation. Her journey from someone who had once attempted to breach financial boundaries to becoming a leading researcher in financial psychology demonstrated the profound potential for personal evolution. "What we're seeing," Rebecca explained to the rapt audience, "is that when people understand the difference between true support and enabling behavior, they naturally create more sustainable financial relationships. It's not about withholding help. It's about providing help in ways that foster independence rather than dependency." The day took an unexpected turn when Thomas announced the launch of a global initiative that would take our work in a new direction. The Financial Integrity Heritage Project would document and preserve stories of individuals who had maintained financial boundaries in challenging circumstances, creating a living history of ethical financial decision-making. "These stories aren't just about money," Thomas emphasized. "They're about the courage to maintain principles under pressure, and how that courage creates lasting positive change." As the afternoon progressed, I received news that would further amplify our impact. The Gates Foundation had committed substantial resources to scaling our programs in developing nations, recognizing that financial boundaries were crucial for sustainable poverty alleviation. The principles that had protected my emergency fund would now help millions build lasting financial security. Dr. James Chen, who had become a leading voice in financial ethics education, shared insights from implementing our programs in diverse cultural contexts. "What's remarkable," he noted, is how these principles transcend cultural differences. Whether in a traditional village in Indonesia or a modern city in Brazil, respecting financial boundaries creates the foundation for authentic prosperity. The most moving moment came during an unexpected video conference with a women's cooperative in rural India. These women had adapted our framework to their cultural context, creating a model of financial independence that respected traditional values while fostering economic empowerment. Before understanding these principles, their leader shared, her voice carrying wisdom earned through experience, "We thought sacrifice meant giving everything to family. Now we understand that true sacrifice is maintaining the boundaries that allow everyone to grow stronger." As evening approached, I received word of another breakthrough. The United Nations had adopted the Wells Framework as part of their Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing that financial boundaries were crucial for building resilient communities. Our work would now influence global policy on sustainable economic development. Looking out over the university campus from the center's rooftop garden, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The emergency fund I had protected had evolved into something far more significant, a legacy of financial wisdom that would continue to grow and adapt long after my time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to expand our impact. But today, I understood that true legacy isn't just about preserving principles. It's about creating frameworks that allow those principles to evolve and grow in response to changing needs. Their chief explained how understanding financial boundaries had helped them maintain their traditional values while engaging with the modern economy. When we learned to say no to exploitative financial pressures, he shared, we found the strength to protect our land and resources for future generations. As the day progressed, I received word of another breakthrough. Harvard Business School had made the Wells Framework a mandatory part of their MBA curriculum, recognizing that future business leaders needed to understand the relationship between personal integrity and sustainable prosperity. Dr. James Chen, who had become a leading voice in ethical finance education, shared insights from a decade of teaching these principles. What we're seeing in the next generation of leaders, he noted, is a fundamental shift in how they view the relationship between money and relationships. They're learning that boundaries don't limit prosperity, they enable it. The most powerful moment came during an unprecedented global video conference linking financial education centers across 6 continents. Each location shared stories of how maintaining financial boundaries had transformed their communities. From a women's cooperative in Kenya to a tech startup in Estonia, the message was clear. Principled financial decisions create ripples of positive change that transcend cultural and economic boundaries. As evening approached, I received a message that brought our journey full circle. The emergency fund that had started this all had inspired a global movement called the Integrity Fund Initiative. Communities worldwide were creating their own versions of emergency funds, not just as financial safety nets, but as symbols of their commitment to ethical prosperity. Looking out over the East River from the UN building, I reflected on how far we'd come from that first difficult conversation with Rebecca. The principles that had protected my emergency fund had evolved into a global framework for building sustainable prosperity while maintaining authentic relationships. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we continued to adapt these principles for an ever-changing world. But today, I understood that true transformation isn't just about maintaining boundaries or building wealth. It's about creating systems that allow both integrity and prosperity to flourish naturally. The sun set over Manhattan, casting a golden glow across the city's skyline. Each light represented countless individuals making daily choices about money and relationships. Thanks to the ripple effects of one principled decision, more of those choices would be guided by understanding that financial boundaries and authentic prosperity grow stronger together. As I prepared to leave the UN chamber, Dr. Sarah Martinez shared one final insight. You know what's remarkable? Your emergency fund didn't just protect your finances, It showed the world that when we stand firm in our principles, we create possibilities we never imagined. That's a legacy that will continue to grow and evolve long after we're gone. And there, in that moment, I understood the deepest truth of our journey. Sometimes the most valuable emergency fund isn't the money we protect, but the courage to maintain principles that create positive change for generations to come. Every no spoken in service of integrity becomes a yes to a future where prosperity and relationships strengthen each other naturally. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Sometimes the most valuable emergency fund is the wisdom we pass on, showing future generations that maintaining integrity creates opportunities for everyone to thrive. As the sun set over Silicon Valley, casting long shadows across the center's innovative architecture, I knew that this was just the beginning. The principles that had emerged from one person's stand for financial boundaries would continue to evolve, helping countless others build lives of authentic prosperity while maintaining the relationships that give that prosperity meaning. 8 years to the day after I protected my emergency fund from Rebecca's demands, I found myself in an unexpected but fitting location. The United Nations General Assembly had convened a special session on global financial ethics, and I was about to address representatives from 193 nations. The morning light filtered through the iconic windows, illuminating a chamber filled with leaders ready to transform financial relationships on a global scale. The day began with a revelation that perfectly encapsulated our journey. Dr. Sarah Martinez presented findings from a comprehensive global study that tracked the ripple effects of financial boundary decisions across cultures and generations. "What we've discovered," she explained, displaying intricate data visualizations on the chamber's screens, "is that financial integrity creates a phenomenon we're calling ethical compound interest, where one person's stand for principles generates exponential positive change across communities and time." Marcus Chen, who had pioneered the implementation of our principles in Asian markets, shared how the framework had evolved beyond our initial vision. "We're seeing something remarkable," he noted. "Communities that embrace financial boundaries don't just prevent fraud, they create new models of prosperity that lift everyone involved." The assembly fell silent as Rebecca took the podium. Her transformation from someone who had once attempted to breach financial boundaries to becoming a global advocate for ethical finance represented everything we hoped to achieve. 8 years ago, she began, her voice steady with earned wisdom, "I thought financial boundaries were barriers to love. Today, I understand they're the foundation of authentic prosperity." During the lunch break, I received news that would carry our work into new territory. The World Bank had committed to incorporating the Wells framework into their development funding criteria, recognizing that sustainable economic growth requires strong financial boundaries at both personal and institutional levels. Thomas, now leading our international research division, unveiled a groundbreaking initiative that would take our principles into the future. The Global Financial Integrity Network would use artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to help communities maintain healthy financial boundaries while fostering collaborative prosperity. "The next frontier," he explained, "isn't just protecting individual boundaries. It's creating systems that naturally align personal integrity with collective growth." The afternoon brought an unexpected demonstration of our principles in action. Via satellite link, we connected with a remote village in the Amazon where indigenous communities had adapted the Wells framework to protect both their financial and environmental resources.